Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ahlul Bayt Live on Ahlul Bayt TV. My name is Amr Hussain. I'll be your host for this evening as we discuss defending the Prophet's honor in Islam. We will look at various aspects of the Prophet's life. We'll also look at how he taught people in what to do with provocation and how we can learn from this. We'll also be looking at contemporary issues and how we can defend the Prophet's honor, what the correct ways are, and how we can go about, upholding his name. Our guest this evening is somebody who needs no introduction on Ahlul Bayt TV. One of our regular speakers and guests is Sayyid Zafar Abbas. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome this evening. I want to just begin, in fact, before I begin, one other thing we have running at the moment. If you want to tweet your views, the hashtag we're using at the moment is #WhoIsMuhammad. And if you put your comments on that, we'll be reading them out as the show goes on. So please keep up your tweets. Obviously, you can contact us on the phone to ask any questions you have to say, and also via Twitter. So I want to start off with a bit of history to begin with. In terms of the first thing was, what kind of things did our Prophet teach his family members, his companions, and the wider ummah in his lifetime, with regarding how you are with people and how you should uphold kind of manners, etc.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I'll begin by congratulating you and everyone on this auspicious month, which is the month of our Holy Prophet of Islam. I think this is a discussion that's very important with regards to the fact that whenever the Holy Prophet of Islam's life is celebrated, that we should the purpose that we should be getting from that celebration and that memory is to act upon his teachings and be the people that he would like us to be. And in order to find that out, it's actually really, really easy. The Holy Quran gives us a very thorough introduction about what the Holy Prophet, who he is, what he stands for, what's the whole purpose for him being sent. And the Holy Prophet himself on many occasions tells us that this is the reason why I've been sent, and he shows us. He not just says it, but he demonstrates it as well. So the Holy Quran says to us, for example, in Surah Al-Ahzab, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةً حَسَنَةً لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. So in the Messenger of Allah, certainly in the Messenger of Allah, you have the best example if you are those who desire Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Day of Judgment. So if you believe, then the Messenger of Allah is the best exemplar, the best example, the most beautiful example in terms of person to be followed. Regarding the Holy Prophet of Islam, in another occasion, for instance, Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have not sent you except that you are رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. You're the mercy towards everything that has been created. Holy Prophet of Islam himself, when he's asked about, for example, he's asked about the religion of Islam, a Bedouin comes to him and says, Ya Rasulullah, what is Islam in one sentence? So he replies by saying that it is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and helping and serving his creation. On another occasion, the Holy Prophet of Islam, talking about the reasoning for him being sent to people, he says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The only reason that I've been sent to people, the only reason I've been made a messenger, is to perfect the akhlaq of the people. All of this is giving us an insight into a man who is merciful, a man who has the best conduct, a man whose whole purpose, the whole reason why he's there in that society is to improve people's conduct. So in light of all of that, we would then not be surprised to find or to read that even in the situation where somebody goes out of their way to be offensive to the Holy Prophet of Islam, he still upholds those high moral standards. You know, he still maintains that high moral ground. Even where there's people, the stories are very well known, you know, we've heard them all growing up, people throwing rubbish on him, blocking his path, or, you know, when he was praying, for example, they threw the intestines of the sheep on him, so on and so forth. You know, in the sense that, the reason why I'm mentioning these is in the sense that it wasn't like a one-off thing. So this was a continual, you know, torrent of abuse that was they were very clear of what their intentions were. We want you to either stop preaching this message, right, and leave our religion alone, and so, you know, let us believe in whatever we want to believe in, or we're going to continue doing this to you because we feel threatened by you. And yet, despite that, so, you know, there was no doubt that their intention was to cause offense, was to stop the Holy Prophet doing what he was doing. Yet, despite all of that, he never responded with violence, for example. He never even responded, you know, with harshness even. You know, the story of where the woman used to throw rubbish at him is very famous. You know, we all hear it many times. We've all heard it, and we continue to hear it from the majalis. Whenever I read about this story or I talk about this story, I always ask the question to myself, and I say that surely that, you know, wherever Rasulullah was going, he could have changed the way that he was going. Why is it after once, twice, three times, he continued going that same way? And if I was to, you know, ask that question to myself, I would immediately answer by saying, with the benefit of hindsight, that I'm being short-sighted. I'm looking at the present, whereas Rasulullah is looking at the future. He knows that that same person who is throwing rubbish on him today will tomorrow become a Muslim. That same woman is going to become a Muslim tomorrow. And if you look at contemporary examples, you'll see that many people who would have previously been very against the religion of Islam and made anti-Islamic statements, later on become Muslims. So this is not some, you know, it's not something that was just there in the time of the Holy Prophet. It has continued, you know, even up to the contemporary time and era, we still see those examples. So just because somebody happens to be against the religion of Islam or is causing offense to the religion of Islam or to the Holy Prophet today, does not mean that that person doesn't have the capability to change and become a different person tomorrow. So that's one. And the religion of Islam is always saying that there's two ways of looking at a person. There's one way of looking at this person, that this person is going to go to hell. The other way of looking at this person is that this person could go to heaven. This person has the potential to go to heaven. This has you and I and everyone, you know, the potential to be saved is within everyone. But the question is will I find that thing, that the way in which to get that potential out of the person? And rather than being emotional, rather than being, you know, almost irrational, if you like, in the fact that because somebody has acted in a particular way that I react to that. And inshallah we'll come back to this. Reacting to something is already showing the sign of weakness. It's already showing the sign of weakness, that I had to wait for something to happen for me to react to it. So that's from the time of the Holy Prophet. You know, if we look at the historical, if we summarize this whole historical area before you go on to the contemporary issue, is that from the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam, we saw that the abuse towards the Holy Prophet of Islam was, not only was it severe, but it was constant as well. And despite all of those things, when the Holy Prophet of Islam then becomes powerful, so now somebody, and Orientalists have made this argument, that's why we you know, it is intellectually honest of us to mention that as well, that somebody may bring this objection and say, well, in Mecca the Holy Prophet of Islam was weak, Therefore, he couldn't respond. But later on, when he became powerful, then maybe he responded. So later on, when he became powerful, what happened? So later on, when he became powerful and there were wars that took place, we won't go into the details of those. However, when he is the most powerful, and it's now the day when the Holy Prophet Islam, accompanied by 10,000 people, is returning back to Mecca from Medina, on the day of what is called the conquest of Mecca, or the victory of Mecca. One of the companions says that هذا يوم الانتقام, today is the day of revenge. To which the Holy Prophet of Islam says to him, no, today is not the day of intiqam, today is not the day of revenge. He says, what is today? And he says, I am the Prophet of mercy. And هذا يوم المرحمة, today is the day of mercy. Today is the day where mercy will be over all of those people who will either stay in their houses or will be in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or in the house of somebody else. Right? And he's shown us that when you're powerful and then you forgive, this is what the Holy Prophet of Islam is about.
Yeah, that's the key thing. I mean, despite the provocation that was given previously, and I suppose that this is a lesson for everyone, and especially at that time. Despite that provocation, he kept his patience, and then even when you're in a position to, get your own back on somebody who's done things to you, you're in a position to do that. You still show that mercy. I suppose that shows the difference between how he was and the other people.
How the rest of the people. And in fact, Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, a very beautiful saying, highlights this action of the Holy Prophet of Islam. He summarizes it in a saying, and he says that only the person who has the power to punish can forgive. Right? Yes. So forgiveness is not, I can't do anything, so I have to forgive. But the one who has the capability, I am in a position to punish this person, yet I forgive, that is forgiveness. As the Holy Prophet of Islam on the day of conquest of Mecca is in the power, or is in the position to punish people. There were people there who had killed his uncle, there were people there who had killed his relatives, there were people there who had fought in all these battles, and he was in a position to punish them. And if he had punished them, he would have been well within his rights and within the law of the religion of Islam to do so. But he's showing that I am the Prophet of mercy. I am the one who has been sent as mercy, and therefore I'm showing mercy to people, so that this might be a lesson to my followers tomorrow to show mercy to other people.
Were there any other examples of at that time where he demonstrated to, whether it be his family members or the people in general, this kind of message, where he's got the ability to punish, yet he forgives? Were there any other examples where he gave that?
I mean, the biggest example on the day of conquest of Mecca is when Wahshi, the one who killed his uncle Hamza, came to become Muslim, and the Holy Prophet of Islam was, it is mentioned in the riwayat, in fact, that the Holy Prophet of Islam began to cry, because he remembered that moment when his uncle was killed by the javelin that was thrown by Wahshi. And yet, the Holy Prophet of Islam did not punish him. He was well within his rights to punish him, yet he did not punish him, he let him go. He told him, now you become Muslim, now go. But even in the battles, for example, so when the battles did take place, and at the end of the battles, so people will be taken as prisoners of war, the Holy Prophet of Islam would be very particular in telling them, they're still human beings, you still have to treat them as human beings, you have to treat them properly, you cannot oppress them. They have rights. They might be prisoners of war, but they still have rights. They still have to be treated properly. They can, and for example, after the Battle of Badr, when he gave them options, so he said, either those who are wealthy can buy their freedom, those who know how to read and write can teach people how to read and write and get their freedom. So he's giving them options. He's telling them, this is the way that this is the blueprint of how the religion of Islam is going to operate. Or after other battles, when people from his own side left him, verses of the Holy Quran came down and said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven them, and the Messenger of Allah has forgiven them as well. In numerous instances where the Holy Prophet of Islam in these battles was in a position of power. He had the upper hand many occasions. Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam, when the man spat on his face, for example. You know, he's showing us that this is the training of the Holy Prophet of Islam. That the man, Amr ibn Abdul spat on his face, he came down from Amr and then overpowered him again. When they saw him afterwards, they said, Ya Ali, you were in a position to kill him, why didn't you? And you know, at this stage, we would probably say that Amir al-Mu'minin salam is the one who's saying, you know, when I overpowered him once, I can overpower him again. Right? So, and I didn't want to kill him on the basis that he had spat on me, and I wanted to kill him for the religion of Islam. So all of this is giving us an insight into there's ethics to everything. You know, even in war, there's ethics. You know, war is something that we don't associate akhlaq or ethics with in today's day and age. You know, all is fair in love and war, as the famous saying is. But religion of Islam says no. Even in war, even in fighting, even in battle, this is the heat of battle. There are still ethics. There's still ways of dealing with people, even with someone who you're engaged in fighting with. So all of these things show us that when it comes to defending the Holy Prophet of Islam's honor, when it comes to demonstrating our love for the Holy Prophet of Islam, and it's commendable, and it's something that brings all Muslims together, regardless of their school of thought. There are only very few things that bring all Muslims together in today's day and age, in this fractured world. But this is one of them that brings all Muslims, regardless of their school of thought, together, which is the personality of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And that is, of course, a testament to the Holy Prophet of Islam himself. And we shouldn't forget that over 1400 years, all this abuse has been hurled at the Holy Prophet of Islam. And despite that, he's still the Holy Prophet, and people are still following him. So when he's withstood 1500 years of abuse, he'll withstand some more as well. However, there's still a way in which to discuss. There's a way to inshallah we'll come to the contemporary stuff, and we will discuss, how the Holy Prophet of Islam has to be discussed, how we should talk about him, and if somebody's got genuine critique of the Holy Prophet of Islam, then nobody would be offended with that. It is the way in which that things happen, which are the cause and the reasoning behind the offence.
I mean, you can also, as you pointed out there, you can also see his teachings, in particular, to his family, have been carried on. So you can see the manners and the akhlaq that our Imams showed after, in years to come after his death, that they demonstrated the same attributes, such as that forgiveness. The famous incidents after Karbala where Imam Sajjad forgave various people from the events of Karbala, etc. So they were demonstrated there. Same with as Imam Ali did, So it demonstrates that the teachings are there. It's about actually following them, which unfortunately some haven't. Moving on. In terms of if we come to the kind of jurisprudential side of it, in Islam, what's our responsibility, and what does it tell us to do in terms of defending our religion, and in particular the name of the Prophet? What's the kind of rulings as such on those?
So, for example, in terms of what the religion demands of us is that everything that we believe, we do so because of the personality of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So, when we talk about the Holy Quran, when we talk about all the other beliefs in the unseen, so the belief in angels, the belief in heaven and hell, belief in all of these things which we can't see. are all dependent on our belief in the Holy Prophet of Islam. To a certain extent, even our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dependent upon the belief on the Holy Prophet of Islam. So, what this shows is that if the Holy Prophet of Islam as a person is attacked, if his veracity, if his authenticity, if his truthfulness, if his personality can be challenged, if it's challenged in the sense that someone can prove that something that he said is not correct or is wrong, alayhi billah, then effectively our whole belief is challenged. Effectively, everything that we believe in is all under question because the Holy Prophet of Islam's person has been challenged. This is why the school of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ is very emphatic about the isma, the sinlessness of the Holy Prophet of Islam. That whatever we believe in is because of the Holy Prophet of Islam, and therefore everything that the Holy Prophet of Islam has delivered to us is without any mistake or error or omission, any kind of thing, let alone disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's not even an error, mistake or an omission to what the Holy Prophet of Islam has delivered to us, because to accept that would be to effectively bring under question every single one of the beliefs that we have. So in that sense, the personality of the Holy Prophet of Islam is very important. And therefore, it is imperative that we know, as is well known with regards to Usul al-Din, that in this you don't follow anybody. You have to be convinced your own self. And you at least, okay, I have arguments of why I believe in Allah, or I believe in the Prophet, or I believe in the Imams, or the Day of Judgment, and I can't convince somebody else. That's fine. As long as I can convince myself, the bare minimum that the religion demands me to have is that I should have a proof and evidences for these beliefs that convince me that if I'm in conversation with my conscience, I can say this is why I believe. That is the bare minimum that religion of Islam is demanding from me. That my conscience should be satisfied with the arguments that I present with regards to what I believe in. Now, the Holy Prophet of Islam is under attack, for example, or people want to be offensive about the Holy Prophet of Islam. Then it depends on the intent of the person who is doing it. Now, for example, if we take this issue of the cartoons, and obviously it's happened before as well, the issue therefore is not the cartoon itself, right? Whatever the cartoon might be. Because there can be a justification in light of Islamic teachings about depicting people. Some people might say that it's prohibited, but some people and some arguments can be presented within Islamic teachings to say it's okay. In that, with that, then the issue is not about the cartoon, because a depiction can be okay. The issue is about how the cartoon portrays the person who's in the cartoon. And that is not something that's alien even to a non-Muslim audience or a non-religious audience. Because there have been many cartoons in the past, we'll look at a few of them. There's been many cartoons in the past which have been deemed offensive not because of the cartoon. So if I depict, for example, a politician in the cartoon, or I depict a leader or some other personality in a cartoon, then from a non-religious point of view, there's no problem in depicting that person. However, the way that person is depicted, or the impression that the cartoon gives of the person, is what is causing the offense. So therefore, it is the question of how the Holy Prophet of Islam is depicted, more than the fact that he is depicted as in a cartoon, which is what is the issue, or the contention that is there.
Okay, thank you very much, Said. We're going to be going for a short break now, so please join us after the break to continue the discussion. Remember to hashtag Who is Muhammad on Twitter, and we'll be reading some of those out after the break. We'll see you in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Ahlul Bayt Live. We're going to continue our discussion on defending the honor of our Prophet in Islam. Before we continue, I'm just going to read out a few tweets that have been sent with the hashtag Who is Muhammad. So if you do want to contribute to the show, if you tweet your comments with Who is Muhammad, I will try and read out a few as we go along. We have one which says, the best way to defend the honor of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is to act like him. We have another one which says, he taught me to respect my parents, feed the poor, and defend the oppressed. His humble character, beautiful mannerisms, sweet innocence, divine knowledge continues to captivate the world. We have another one which says, the most influential figure in history, followed by Jesus, according to the distinguished historian Michael Hart. We have, as Zaid was referring to earlier, when his neighbor used to throw trash on him every day. On the day he didn't, our Prophet went to see if he was okay. I think it was a she. Who is Muhammad? He always smiled, although through every pain. We also have one tweet, it's quite a nice one. A combination of 1 million words from 26 letters can't define who my Muhammad is, which is quite nice. He was called a teacher but had no degree. He was called a healer but wasn't a doctor. Had no slaves but was called master. So if you continue to keep sending your views, your opinions of who is Muhammad to you, we'll do our best to read as many of the tweets out as we can through the show. Before we continue our discussion, we have a short video clip which we're going to go through. It's just highlights a few of the key points about our Prophet, and we'll discuss it briefly after the video clip. So we're going to play that now.
الإيمان مرتبط باقتناع الإنسان وعدم قناعته. لذلك الله تبارك وتعالى يقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فمن شاء فليؤمن ومن شاء فليكفر. وهل هنالك آية بهذا الوضوح تبين أن الإنسان مخير في اختيار الإسلام أو غير الإسلام؟ فإذا كان الإسلام كما يتصور هؤلاء السذج قام بحد السيف، يعني أجبر الآخرين على ماذا؟ على قبوله، وهذا لا يقبله الإسلام. الإسلام لا يريد إنسان يؤمن به فقط بماذا؟ باللسان. يريد إنسان يؤمن به بماذا؟ بقلبه. يريد إنسان يعتقد بصحة الإسلام بقلبه، والاعتقاد القلبي لا يقوم بالسيف. قال الله تبارك وتعالى مخاطبا النبي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفأنت تكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين. وهذا خطاب من الله إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. يا رسول الله أيها النبي أفأنت تكره الناس على أن يكونوا مؤمنين؟ لا، بل دعهم وشأنهم، أنت عليك ما عليك إلا البلاغ، فمن أراد أن يؤمن يؤمن ومن أراد أن يكفر يكفر. إذن لا يمكن من خلال الآيات القرآنية المباركة ومن خلال سيرة رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه أن يكون رسول الله يمارس ولو للحظة واحدة مفردة الإرهاب، بل رسول الله هو حارب هذه المفردة، وفي ذلك الكثير في سيرته صلوات الله وسلامه عليه.
verse number 32 of Surah Ma'idah, Surah number 5, which really highlights the Islamic position on the sanctity of life, that we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, min ajli dhalika katabna ala bani Isra'ila annahu man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ard فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. For that reason we prescribed unto the children of Israel that whoever kills a single human being, takes away the life of a single human being without just cause, for no reason such as spreading or causing mischief in the land, or for not having killed another human being, anyone who takes away the life of an innocent human being, it is as if he has taken away the life of the entire humanity.
جاء الرسول صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فنشر مبادئ السلام ونشر مبادئ المحبة ونشر مبادئ الإخاء، حتى أن الله تبارك وتعالى يقول في محكم كتابه وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين.
The reality of Islam remains under skeptical lens until today. The aggression of certain Muslims has overshadowed Islam's peaceful teachings. While the mainstream media has become the box of thoughts for our contemporary society, the truth about the Holy Prophet has remained untold. Due to the excessive attention placed upon Muslim minorities, the reality of Islam and its teachings has been devalued. Regardless, he still remains the epitome of mercy, and his name lightens the hearts of millions. His example inspires many, and his character attracts the minds of individuals from all races and backgrounds around the world.
Very interesting video. So, alluded to a lot of what you spoke about earlier, where about the Prophet being sent to the world as a mercy to mankind, and as the was said on there as well, that he was totally anti-violence and anti-terrorism as such, and was very much against that, which is kind of highlighted in the fact that during his lifetime, many of the wars, the battles that happened, were never on the offensive. It was always as a defensive, as a defense mechanism that the wars happened. So that kind of highlights the point that it wasn't, a violent religion or started by the sword.
No doubt, as we heard, that any kind of belief that would arise as a result of fear would not really be any belief that is worth having, as the Sayyid was saying. And really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He so desired, has the capability to make everybody believe, and therefore He doesn't need to aggressively or violently get people to believe anyway. So in that sense, that yes, teachings that or teachings that encourage violence in any way are alien to the Sunnah and the practice of the Holy Prophet of Islam and our Aimma alayhi salatu salam after him. And of course, it is imperative that part of defending the honor of the Holy Prophet of Islam is that his, as somebody, as the tweet you read out, is to act on his teachings. And his teachings were everything that people who are using his name today are not. And therefore, defending the Holy Prophet's honor, as I would imagine, and I would say with a lot of conviction, in fact, that the Holy Prophet of Islam would be more offended by people killing innocents in his name than he would be by someone drawing a cartoon about him. As you heard the verse of the Holy Quran, that an innocent life is like killing all of humanity.
I want to stop you there for a second, say. I will come back to it in a minute. We have a caller on the line, though. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam to the Sayyid and yourself.
Salam.
Yes, I had a question regarding what you're discussing at the moment, and my question is more, what is considered blasphemous in Islam, and what is the punishment for that? And also, referring to these cartoons, this magazine, I understand, continuously published derogatory cartoons about the Prophet. Like you said, it was more the issue of what the cartoon was depicting and how they were depicting the Prophet. And where is there an overlap here of blasphemy, or is there not? And in particular, what should the Muslims then do if somebody continues to degrade the Prophet, peace be upon him? Do they just ignore him? Because, like you said, you give examples of being kind, generous, etc. But in this day and age, it doesn't really affect people who are against Islam, period. And the small minority then aggravate that image anyway. I mean, looking at Iran, for example, most of the country is followers of Ahlul Bayt, and they try to emulate them, and yet they're seen to be the biggest enemy as far as the West is concerned, despite their efforts to be, pious or gentle or leading by example, if you understand what I'm trying to express here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Sister Foucault. And that's a blasphemy. What is considered blasphemous?
I guess, blasphemy is a very broad term, and today in different countries, different things constitute blasphemy. Unfortunately, in many countries in the world, the laws around blasphemy are misused in order to punish minorities, in order to take out personal vendettas. It's the easiest way to get someone punished is to accuse them of having committed blasphemy and then having them killed in various Muslim countries around the world. In the absence of a ma'soom, of an infallible, then there's no execution of such a law, and of course the religion of Islam is not a religion which condones the taking of the law into your own hands. So if it is proven that this magazine and the people who did it, what their actions were blasphemous, and blasphemous to the extent that they should be killed, it is still not justification for people to take the law into their own hands and go and kill them.
Yeah.
Hence, even if that is the case, then there's still no justification of that. Now, with regards to people who want to cause offence, then as we previously mentioned, there are many examples of people who go out of their way to cause offence to people, and after that they can be changed. And the way that they change is not by being aggressive, but by staying calm. Holy Prophet Islam, in the face of attacks that took place against him, stayed calm, and that those attacks that happened against him were far more severe than anything that has happened now. As far as how we should respond, or how, the most important thing is that yes, we have to act according to his teachings. But more importantly is that we have to show, or we have to demonstrate that what you are using as a defense to justify what you have done has holes in it. That you have to play the game in accordance with what's happening at this moment in time. So, for example, when they say that this is freedom of speech, and that we have the freedom to offend people, then response number one is that if you have the freedom to offend people, then people have the freedom to be offended.
Yeah.
And to express that offence in peaceful ways. Response number two is that many European countries around throughout the mainland have various different laws preventing people from questioning various kinds of genocides after 1945. France also has this law. In this law, it is a crime punishable by law to question any genocide which is accepted by the United Nations to be a genocide. Even to the extent of questioning the numbers of people killed in those genocides. And there are various examples of people who've been put into prison for having questioned those numbers. Now, I'm not saying that we should be questioning the numbers. I'm not making a value judgment on whether that is right or wrong. I'm just, as a statement of fact, mentioning the law that exists. And that law is a limit on the freedom of speech of those people who have questioned the numbers that were killed in those genocides. When, and this is very important, when those people were questioning the numbers who were killed in the genocides, they were not being offensive. They were academically questioning those numbers. Yet despite that, the law was applied to them and they were punished. Whereas in this case, not only is this being offensive, but they're very open and clear that we are being offensive, and people's sentiment is being, people are feeling offended. Similarly, there are many cases in various newspapers across the world, from the west to the east, of where certain cartoons have been published. People have taken them to be bad taste, people have considered them to be offensive, and the owners and the people responsible for those newspapers have come out and apologized for the offense that's been caused as a result of those cartoons that have been published. In most cases, those cartoons were depicting politicians. So the question that Muslims should be asking is that if you depict a politician in a not so flattering light, then people get offended and then the newspapers apologize. But if you depict the Holy Prophet of Islam in a bad light, then not only does nobody apologize, but it is defended as freedom of speech. So when the argument is presented in this way, then the person who has not perhaps paid attention towards this angle will pause and think and say, well, certainly, why is there this double standard? Why is there the fact that if a politician is depicted and people don't like it, or people complain and they say we were offended or this was offensive, then the newspaper apologizes. But in this case, not only do they not apologize, but they go and print it again. To say that it would be against our freedom to do so. All of this, and this is very important, all of this does not justify in any way killing people, right? Even in this scenario, even in the fact that whatever was done was offensive, whatever was done with the intent to offend, whatever was done was a clear provocation of Muslim sentiment, that still does not justify killing people, right? So that has to be very clear. There's no if and but or whatever in this case. To go out and kill people is not justified under any circumstances. Taking the law into your own hand is not a justification in any circumstance, regardless of what happens. However, there has to be academic discussion. There has to be a way to discuss what has happened, why it's happened, and why. This is very important as well. Why is it that continually, usually something comes in the news, it's in there for a day, that's it. For a whole week, discussion about this kept going on. And while that was happening, 2,000 people were killed in Nigeria, which nobody spoke about. People were killed in Pakistan for celebrating the birthday of the Holy Prophet of Islam in that same week that this happened. And the question that Muslims should be asking themselves is that people were killed for drawing cartoons of the Prophet, and then people were killed for celebrating the birthday of the Prophet. And both of the groups of people who killed go back to one group of people. So the question that Muslims should be asking this group of people is, what is the honor of the Holy Prophet of Islam? As far as you're concerned, what is it that you want? And what you're doing is causing us more aggravation as Muslims. We are more offended by these actions of yours than any action by any cartoonist or anything else. That is much more of an offence to the Holy Prophet of Islam, and an offence to the religion of Islam, an offence to me as a Muslim, that because of your actions, I'm not responsible for your actions. I shouldn't have to apologize for people I don't know acting on teachings I don't recognize, doing things that I would never do. However, the consequences of those actions will be borne by me and you and all Muslims around the world. We cannot get away from. Even though we are not responsible, even though we don't have to justify, even though we don't have to apologize. However, the consequences of what has happened will be affected. I will be affected, you will be affected, and Muslims all around the world will be affected, regardless of whether we like it or not. So that is more of a disgrace and a dishonoring of the Holy Prophet of Islam and his teachings than anyone drawing a cartoon. No doubt drawing a cartoon or doing these things causing offence is on one side. And as we said, there are ways of how we should be combating that. The ways of doing it in today's day and age, social media is very powerful. In today's day and age, even media is more accessible for us. And we should be using all these tools to get that message out.
Just go back to something you were saying just before we had the call.
Yes.
You said that, like we had in the video clip, that the verse from the Quran says, killing one person is like killing the whole of mankind, etc. Now this is a very commonly played out verse, which highlights that what is it with the Muslims who commit these killings that they don't understand about that particular verse, that it's continually played out, but they continually kill? It's almost like the opposite.
I mean, obviously, those who kill are the ones who can respond most accurately about what their motivations are. But from time and again, they will present the justification that either these persons were not innocent and therefore we killed them, or they're not real Muslims, for example, so we killed them, or that they did something X, Y, and Z, which takes them out of that category of innocence or not, blameworthy, and therefore we have a justification to kill them. However, even if that's the case, as I mentioned, even if it's the case that they had some crime against them, they did something wrong, they were offensive, they were black, whatever they did, they were not innocent. It still, due process still has to be followed.
Sure.
This is not a justification that just because somebody has committed a crime or somebody has done something wrong or something has committed a sin, that due process will not be followed. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that for human beings, even a human being who's committing something wrong, when he comes on the Day of Judgment, Allah will follow due process.
Sure.
He will still go through the process of, did you commit the action? Yes, you committed the action. This is the proof that you committed the action. Now after that, you're going to get the punishment. Not at the fact that this person did X and we go out and without going through due process. So the religion of Islam is very keen on this, and this is the only way to keep peace in society. Otherwise, everybody will say, well, this person did this to me and this person did that to me, and then there will be no peace at all.
So in the same way as if somebody is caught with a smoking gun with a dead body on the floor, it's kind of, they've done everything, but they couldn't just put them in jail straight away. They'd have to go through the due process.
You still have to go through the due processes, because that is the way that you're going to maintain the law and order in society. Otherwise, how would there be order in society? And religion of Islam, and this is very key, religion of Islam is very concerned with how society is, how society is run, this will affect the whole of society, not just that individual or that person who's done this action.
Okay. Thank you very much, Said. We have another break coming up. Where afterwards, when we return from the break, we'll read out some more of your tweets. So remember, hashtag who is Muhammad, and we'll try and read out as many as we can after the break. We'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Ahlul Bayt TV. We're going to continue our discussion about defending the Prophet's honor in Islam. Before we continue, I'm just going to read out some more tweets that we've had while we've been away with the hashtag who is Muhammad. We have one here. He is the one that taught us that if somebody does evil to you, you bring good to them. A prophet who prevents his people from killing a bird without reason would not allow unnecessary bloodshed, as we alluded to earlier. Prophet said, you will not be able to encompass all people with your money, so meet them with cheerful faces and joy, unlike many Muslims nowadays. What he wasn't was a man who would condone killings in his name. He was firmly against violence as an aggressor. I said, alluded to earlier that he would be more against people killing in his name than somebody drawing a cartoon, which is very true. The man who hated injustice and racism formed early Muslim communities that was racially diverse and socially, religiously tolerant. In the community that they had there, they lived with Jews, Christians, etc., in peace and harmony, which unfortunately is causing a problem today. He said, none of you truly believe until you wish for your brother what you wish for yourself. So these are just some of the tweets that we've had with the hashtag who is Muhammad. So please continue these coming in, and we'll try and read some more out before the end of the show. Just continuing our conversation and bringing it to the kind of the real issue and the topic that's on everyone's lips over the past week or two. Now, with regards to the pictures that have been depicted on this French magazine, and also the ones that were previously done, as we talked about earlier, about the Danish cartoons, etc. In one way, I just thought, if they do, draw these things, and do them, is it kind of such a big deal for us? Should it be made into as big a deal as it has been made into? Is it right to have done that, or should we kind of calm down, chill out a little bit? Is it what's the kind of balance with it?
I think that certainly, as I said earlier, the Prophet would be more offended by people killing in his name, or people killing each other because of what has happened, as has happened in the past as well. But particularly, actually, the fact that a cynic, for example, might say that here was a newspaper which had a circulation of 600,000, and then all of a sudden they print the cartoons, and then the following week they print 3 million, and then it runs out, and then they print 5, and it still runs out. So a cynic might say, this is a good way to increase your circulation, and offend people at the same time, and talk about all these things that are being spoken about at the moment. But it certainly is a question mark of the fact that people are dying in different parts of the world. All kinds of oppression is taking place, and people are silent. All of a sudden, as soon as a paper, which no one's heard of until before this, and the same was with the Danish cartoons. Nobody had heard of this paper that printed the cartoons until they did it. And all of a sudden they're famous and they're all over, and everyone now everyone's seen the cartoons, and they're everywhere. And then there's this whole debate amongst the news channels of whether they should show it or they shouldn't show it, so on and so forth. All the stuff that everyone knows about. But certainly this is a question of how big a deal should we make out of it. Another thing, of course, is that we know that the cartoon is not the Prophet, right? It is what the artist or the cartoonist says is their depiction of the Prophet.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's interesting actually that the people who are shouting the loudest or protesting the loudest about the cartoons are the same people who say that any attribution to any particular thing is not worthy of respect anyway. So, for example, when we go to Medina, and if we want to touch the grave of the Holy Prophet of Islam, this group of people shouts out and says that you're not allowed to touch the grave of the Prophet because the Prophet is dead and the grave has no value. Or to attribute certain things, alam or whatever these symbols that we have, and they say there's no value in these things because this is not the real thing. Well, the same answer is to the fact that the cartoons are not real, right? That is not actually the Prophet. It's just what the cartoonist says is their impression of the Holy Prophet. So, that is what followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam should say to those people who bring this as an objection and say, well, you became offended about the cartoons. That shows that there's certainly something in it in terms of when somebody says this is the Holy Prophet of Islam or attributes something to the Holy Prophet of Islam, then certainly there is some value in that. But also, yes, if, for example, it didn't receive as much media attention, or people did not go out and kill those cartoonists, maybe we wouldn't have even known about this newspaper. And if we didn't know about it, then we wouldn't be talking about it, we wouldn't be doing any protests or any of these things. However, it depends on the intent. As we said earlier, it's not about the cartoon, it's not about the depiction. Maybe some Muslims might say depicting the Holy Prophet of Islam is not allowed. That is a jurisprudential issue which is debated within different schools of thought in Islam. Even within a school of thought, there may be different opinions about that. However, the issue is, what is the intent behind depicting the Holy Prophet of Islam? And for example, in the Danish cartoons, they depicted him looking like someone who is going to commit suicide. There was a bomb and so on and so forth. And that was clearly there to offend people. And they were very clear about the fact that we are drawing these suits to offend people.
Yeah.
So in that sense, then we're allowed to be offended, right? If your purpose is to offend people, if your purpose is to say that we're going to push the boundaries, then people are entitled to be offended as well. They're entitled to say that we don't find this in good taste. We don't think that I personally would not say that that's satire. Satire is making fun of those people who are in power, who are the top, if you like, in terms of power in the world. And making fun of those is truly satire. And that Muslims, particularly Muslims in mainland Europe, are not in positions of power.
But then what they could, from their angle, they could say that, Prophet Muhammad is on top of the world. In terms of the power that, I know he's not here, but the power that he has, as in from Muslims around the world, he's a target like that.
The effect of those is going to be on Muslims. So from that point of view, I would say that I would not consider that to be satire. Now, for that to, is the response to those things proportional? Then that's of course something that we can discuss. Of course, that yes, you know, how proportional should our response be? And yes, you know, if we love the Holy Prophet of Islam, then we will, and you know, we believe in him, and we think that he, you know, he is not those things that the cartoon is trying to portray, or the religion of Islam or Muslims are not that, then we will find that offensive. However, we should also be finding people killing in his name offensive. We should also be finding the fact that there's poverty in the world offensive. We should also be finding the fact that all these other things that are happening in the world is also offensive. You know, 2,000 people being killed on the same day as a cartoon is much more offensive to me than a cartoon. Or people being killed for celebrating the birthday of the Holy Prophet of Islam is more offensive to me than somebody drawing a cartoon. And the people killing, all the people, you know, the common denominator here is that all the people doing the killing are all subscribing to the same ideology. They're all subscribing to the same viewpoint and the same thought process.
And they're Muslim in
and they claim to be Muslims. And that really offends me. That all those people who are doing these actions in various different parts of the world are all subscribing to the same ideology, and they claim to be Muslims as well. And their actions are having a direct effect on my life, on your life, on lives of Muslims everywhere, as a result of what they're doing. But it is important and imperative to show that there's a difference between peaceful protests, there's a difference between peacefully you know, saying that this offends me, and people going out and killing for that. So certainly that is in itself a very important important point. The other point is that once this happened, then of course, you know, as is very well known, on Twitter there were different hashtags which trended. One of them was what translates to "I am Charlie," referring to the magazine. And it was, the impression that was given was that if you didn't participate in this trend, was that you were against freedom, or you're against the values of this country, or of the West. And of course, that is important for me to say that I am not condoning what the magazine did. I'm finding this offensive, but at the same time, I'm not condoning what the killers did either. And there isn't a choice of you're either with us or you're against us. You know, there's all these other opinions as well. And you know, unfortunately, some Muslims participated in this I am Charlie as well, and that really, you know, it showed that they tried very hard to polarize the debate, and that this is not a debate that can be polarized. There is a variety of opinions in between. But then also, more concerningly, there was a hashtag which trended, which was "Kill all Muslims," and you know, whether that was in jest, whether it was serious, whether it was to come of any consequence or not, it showed a worrying trend. It showed that there were people who were willing to blame 1.5 billion people over the actions of 5 or 6 people. And you know, continually we see in the news, for example, you know, whenever there's a group of people who are responsible for a particular crime or a particular horrific act, their religion or their race is not mentioned. Even if, in the case that, you know, sometimes the defense has brought from the other side is that, well, these people did not use religion or race to justify their crime. However, there's been cases in the recent past, over various places in the media, you know, people can go and search them on Google, of where people have actually used their religion and their race to justify this act, this crime that they've committed. But yet the report, when you read the news report, that's not what it says. It doesn't tell you, the headline doesn't say, oh, this person used their religion or their race to justify their crime. Yet when it comes to a Muslim, then that's the first thing on the headline. You know, this Muslim did X.
Just on that, this, for example, this magazine, Charlie Hebdo, they have in the past done various offensive cartoons and so on. Now, they've done offensive cartoons to Christians, for example, with, I think, this week or perhaps the week before, they had with Mary on there and Jesus and so on, and various offensive things on there. Why do Christians not react in the same way?
I guess that it's a different kind of different kind of belief that Christians have, and in fact, I would put on the record to say that if there was a depiction of previous prophets whom Muslims believe in, then I would be offended by a depiction of Mary or Jesus in a if it was done in an offensive way, or even any other prophet, which are respected by other religions, or even other religious groups, that would still be offensive to me. But the question of why other groups don't react in this way is perhaps to do with the way that they see these people. So, for example, Christians see Jesus to be part of the divine Godhead, and therefore, they don't have that relationship with him that Muslims have with the Holy Prophet of Islam. And that's actually very interesting that you raise this point, because I remember that there was a book written in the early 1990s regarding the honor of the Holy Prophet of Islam, called "Be Careful with Muhammad." And in the preface he says that what Muslims will say is that you can say whatever you want about God, but be careful with Muhammad. And that is a reality, that routinely God is abused in many different ways. There's many books written about mocking and ridiculing belief in God and religion as a whole. There's no need to mention the names. Everyone's well aware of the authors who've written these kind of things, and yet Muslims are not going out and protesting against them and saying, why did you say this about God or about Allah or about religion or so on and so on. But when it comes to the Holy Prophet, that shows that the relationship that Muslims have with the Holy Prophet Islam, a very unique relationship, because that relationship, is supposed to be based on love. That we love the Holy Prophet Islam more than we love our parents, we love our relatives, we love anybody else. We love the Holy Prophet Islam, and in fact, the current Pope actually alluded to that in a recent statement when he said that if you were to say, swear at my mother or you abuse my mother, then you could expect a punch in the face. And therefore, he actually, summarized this sentiment that people would have, that saying that you cannot use the justification of freedom of speech to be offensive to people and not expect a response to if you are offensive, because as he said, if you offend somebody, if you say something offensive to somebody that I love, then I will react in this way. And therefore, if you say something offensive to that somebody else holds dear, then definitely there will be a reaction. I have to continually reiterate, just in case somebody is tuned in at this point in time in the program, that is not a justification. Again, this is not a justification for taking the law into your own hands or being violent. But certainly to be offended, and there's multiple ways to be offended, and or to show that I've taken offence, and to be offended is not is as much a right as the person who wants to cause offence. But at the same time, and the petition has gone out, and I'm sure people have seen the petition as well, that there has to be some clarity about freedom of speech. What constitutes freedom of speech, what doesn't. We see sometimes when it comes to certain groups of people that their offence is enshrined in law, and people are punished for that, or they're censored, or newspapers come out and apologize. When it comes to Muslims, there's a different story. So there has to be some clarity about that. We are entitled to know and entitled to have a discussion about freedom of speech and say, you demonstrate to us what's the clarity.
Consistency
What's
as well.
the consistency? What do you mean when you're talking about freedom of speech? If group X is protected by law and group Y is not protected by law, what's the reasoning behind that? Why is it that group X's feelings are protected by law, but group Y is fair game? And that, we can make or cause as much offense as we want towards them.
The other thing that kind of confuses me slightly is that why is it okay to offend people? That's it's being made okay.
Correct.
That whoever it is, we can offend them. Don't worry. And I don't see how that and it's being justified by freedom of speech and so on. But if I'm sitting here next to somebody and I just want to insult them or something, then it doesn't really make sense that it's okay to offend somebody because it's your right to say what you feel like. It seems a strange kind of moral stance to take in society.
In fact, it's very interesting actually you raised that on a micro scale, we would not consider it appropriate in any way.
Absolutely.
If I was sitting next to you, or you're sitting next to me, or we were sitting with a group of people, and I decided to swear at you or be offensive to you, then everybody would take offense at the fact that I'd been offensive, or would make me apologize and say, you should leave this gathering, or you shouldn't have said that. That was not appropriate. And if I was to use a freedom of speech offense, then most people would laugh in my face. Yet when it comes to macro scale, when it comes to millions of people, billions of people in this case, then this freedom of speech defense is all of a sudden acceptable, and everyone says, "Oh, it's freedom of speech." Well, when it was in this scenario of like this group of people, why was the freedom of speech defense not acceptable? And maybe that is the way to bring up the inconsistency in this argument and say, well, really, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to create a society in which everybody is comfortable to live in? And in that society, regardless of the issue of freedom of speech, we will, regardless of whether there's a law or not, we will not be offensive to people. Because being offensive does not make for a good society. If people are offensive to one another, then that society will not be harmonious, it will be fractious. And if we really ask questions about the nature of society that we're trying to create, then we'll get to the bottom of why is it that we aren't offensive to people. On routinely, on a daily basis, we do not go out and be offensive to people on the street or in public transport, at work or at school, or wherever we are. We don't go out and be offensive to people. Why? Because we want that place wherever we are to be harmonious.
Sure. Yeah. Just to, we're unfortunately running out of time. Just a final kind of, if you could just sum up briefly, that in this kind of environment, what's our roles and responsibilities, and how should we react with this kind of provocation?
So I think first of all, as I mentioned right at the beginning, reaction is a sign of weakness. Our character and our role should be to be proactive when it comes to the Holy Prophet of Islam's life and his teachings. We should be out there. It shouldn't need an attack on people for us to go out and tell people about the Holy Prophet of Islam, or for us to go out and act in his teachings. We should be acting his teachings anyway. We should be telling people about the Holy Prophet of Islam anyway. And if we're doing that, then we will get people like the Pope, and that opinion will be more widespread, that these people are acting in this way. They're being good citizens of the society. They're being harmonious. They're integrated in the society. They're doing all the right things. They're doing good. They have good character. They have good morals. They're doing good things to people. They're helping people. So, what is the reason for you to then go out and start mocking their beliefs? For what are you trying to achieve by doing this? And that will be most effective when it doesn't have to be Muslims who have to ask the question. It has to be other people who ask this question as well. And the only way that will happen is if I'm living and teaching and preaching the message of the Holy Prophet Islam in my life, regardless of what's going on in the world.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Said. We've unfortunately run out of time. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Just to finish off with a few tweets that we've had. Happy are those who find fault with themselves instead of finding fault with others. Who is Muhammad? He commanded and fostered the love between relatives and neighbors. The best father any daughter could ask for. And finally, to finish off and to sum it all up, he is the best of mankind. Thank you very much for watching this evening. We've had a very interesting discussion with Sayyid Zafar, and we thank him for his time. And thank you for your contributions, and we'll see you again very soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Ahlul Bayt TV, the holy household for every